PSY 2012, Introduction to Psychology, Summer 2026, Miami-Dade College, Kendall Campus. Midterm Examination Review, prepared by Dr. Michael J. Alicea. Good afternoon, class, and welcome to our Midterm Examination Review for PSY 2012, Introduction to Psychology. Today we are going to review the major concepts, theories, and ideas from chapters 1 through 6. I want you to think critically as we move through this material because psychology is not simply about memorizing definitions. Psychology is about understanding human behavior, human thought, emotion, learning, development, biology, and perception. As we begin, remember that psychology is defined as the scientific study of behavior and mental processes. Throughout this course, we have explored how psychologists attempt to understand why people think, feel, and behave the way they do. One of the earliest themes we discussed involved the interaction between nature and nurture. Nature refers to biological influences such as genetics, brain structure, and heredity, while nurture refers to environmental influences such as culture, education, family experiences, and social interactions. One important perspective that emerged in psychology is evolutionary psychology. Evolutionary psychologists attempt to explain behavior through adaptation and survival. Behaviors that increase survival over generations were more likely to continue. Fear, for example, is considered adaptive because it prepares individuals to respond to danger and increases the chances of survival. We also discussed cultural influences on behavior and how culture shapes emotional expression, customs, attitudes, and social expectations. Modern psychology recognizes that behavior cannot fully be understood without considering cultural influences. Another major influence on behavior is biology. Modern neuroscience has allowed psychologists to observe the brain in action through technologies such as functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI. Biological psychology examines how neurotransmitters, hormones, genetics, and brain structures influence behavior and mental processes. Cognitive psychology, meanwhile, focuses on mental processes such as memory, attention, language, problem-solving, and perception. Cognitive psychologists study how people process information and how thought patterns influence behavior and emotional functioning. As psychology evolved into a scientific discipline, researchers moved away from relying solely on philosophical reasoning and instead adopted scientific methods to study behavior objectively. The scientific method became central to psychological research and includes identifying a problem, gathering information, developing a hypothesis, conducting an experiment, analyzing data, and drawing conclusions. A hypothesis is an educated prediction about the expected outcome of an experiment. We also discussed the difference between independent and dependent variables. The independent variable is manipulated by the researcher, while the dependent variable is what is measured. Understanding these concepts is essential because they appear frequently in psychological research and experimentation. Ethics in research became especially important after the Tuskegee syphilis study, one of the most unethical studies in American history. Participants were deceived and denied treatment, which helped lead to the development of modern ethical standards in psychology. The American Psychological Association established ethical principles emphasizing beneficence, integrity, justice, fidelity, and respect for people's rights and dignity. Researchers must ensure informed consent, confidentiality, and protection from harm. As we moved into neuroscience and biology, we examined the nervous system, which serves as the body's communication network. The two main cell types in the nervous system are neurons and glial cells. Neurons communicate through electrochemical signals. The major parts of the neuron include dendrites, the cell body, the axon, and terminal buttons. Dendrites receive incoming information, while axons transmit electrical impulses known as action potentials. Neurotransmitters are chemical messengers that allow neurons to communicate with one another. The nervous system is divided into the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system consists of the brain and spinal cord, while the peripheral nervous system includes nerves throughout the rest of the body. The peripheral nervous system contains the somatic nervous system, which controls voluntary movement, and the autonomic nervous system, which regulates involuntary functions such as heart rate and breathing. The autonomic nervous system itself is divided into the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. The sympathetic nervous system prepares the body for stressful situations through the fight or flight response, while the parasympathetic nervous system helps restore the body to a calm state after stress has passed. We also explored major brain structures and their functions. The medulla regulates essential life functions such as breathing and heartbeat. The pons helps regulate sleep, arousal, and facial movements. The reticular activating system helps control attention and alertness. Within the limbic system, the amygdala is responsible for fear and emotional processing, while the hippocampus is essential for memory formation. Neuroplasticity refers to the brain's remarkable ability to reorganize and adapt throughout life, especially through learning and experience. In our study of human development, we learned that development begins before birth and continues throughout the lifespan. Prenatal development occurs in 3 stages: the zygote stage, the embryo stage, and the fetal stage. During the embryo stage, major organs and body systems begin forming, while the fetal stage involves growth and maturation. We also discussed teratogens, which are environmental agents that negatively affect prenatal development. Examples include alcohol, drugs, smoking, and certain medications. Exposure to teratogens during pregnancy can interfere with normal physical and cognitive development. We examined the differences between monozygotic and dizygotic twins. Monozygotic twins are identical twins formed when one fertilized egg splits, while dizygotic twins are fraternal twins formed when 2 separate eggs are fertilized. Developmental psychology also examines attachment, cognitive development, emotional growth, language acquisition, and social development across the lifespan. In our chapter on learning, we explored how behavior changes through experience. Learning is defined as a relatively permanent change in behavior resulting from experience. Classical conditioning, introduced by Ivan Pavlov, involves learning through association. Pavlov demonstrated that organisms could associate previously neutral stimuli with meaningful events. Operant conditioning, developed by B.F. Skinner, explains how behavior is shaped through consequences. Reinforcement increases behavior, while punishment decreases behavior. Positive reinforcement involves adding something pleasant to increase behavior, while negative reinforcement involves removing something unpleasant to strengthen behavior. Albert Bandura's observational learning theory demonstrated that individuals can learn simply by observing others. Children often imitate behaviors they observe in parents, peers, teachers, and media figures. This concept remains highly influential in understanding social behavior and learning. Finally, we examine sensation and perception. Sensation refers to detecting environmental stimuli, while perception refers to organizing and interpreting sensory information. Perception is not a passive recording of reality. Instead, the brain actively interprets sensory input based on prior knowledge, expectations, and experiences. Bottom-up processing begins with sensory input from the environment, while top-down processing relies on prior experiences and expectations to interpret information. Gestalt psychologists proposed that the brain naturally organizes sensory information into meaningful patterns. Important Gestalt principles include figure ground, proximity, similarity, closure, and common fate. Vision occupies a major role in human perception because large portions of the brain are dedicated to visual processing. Rods help with night vision and peripheral vision, while cones are responsible for color vision and visual detail. Humans are considered a visual species because so much of our sensory experience depends upon visual processing. As we conclude this review, remember that psychology is deeply interconnected. Biology influences cognition, learning influences development, culture influences perception, and emotions influence behavior and memory. Psychology is ultimately the study of the entire human experience. For your midterm examination, focus on understanding concepts rather than simply memorizing vocabulary terms. Know the major theories and psychologists, understand the functions of major brain structures, review nervous system divisions carefully, and be prepared to apply concepts to real-world situations. The more you understand how these ideas connect together, the more successful you will be on your examination. Good luck to everyone, continue studying carefully, and approach the examination with confidence.